felt that by the time that attack was over, that they had received information that the attack was on, and that they were all out looking for the Japanese. So he left in order that they wouldn't get found, wouldn't catch it, yes.
Were the aircraft carriers on maneuvers, or was it just dumb luck that they weren't in bay, or what?
Well, they were on maneuvers, but it was dumb luck, yeah, really. Because you'd think that at least one of them would have had it in there. And as I shared with Doug, the battleships were not a real factor at all in World War II. Battleships were pretty well obsolete. It was all an air war, and aircraft carriers carried the battle since then. All the battleships did generally was support bombardment, and they did a lot of things. Of course, in Guadalcanal, that was a different story. But that's another story. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
How many torpedoes did the Helena take?
Just one.
Just one?
Just one. Yeah.
Do you remember the sound of the Japanese planes?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot of times, the sound. I lost, there was so many explosions, so much firing, so much, I kind of lost the sense of sound, but I had a sense of fire and fiery water. The harbor was just on fire with oil and water. And that's the sense that stays with me the most. But yes, and it was all noise. There's a picture of the USS Shaw, which was in dry dock just a little ways from us, and a bomb hit in her magazine, forward magazine, and it looked kind of, to me, like an atomic bomb. It was a big explosion, one of the biggest ones, even larger than the Arizona, because the Arizona's forward magazine was exploded, and when that happened, it sunk right to the bottom. So they lost 4,700 men. The total loss in Pearl Harbor of sailors was about 2,400. Yes.
Do you feel like we should have dropped the atomic bomb?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was in Okinawa. We did. Thank you, Harry. I thanked him over and over. Good Lord and Harry brought me through. And I found out that he had a plan for my life, and I've been trying to follow it. Yes, sir.
What qualities did you admire most in your leaders?
I think probably and I didn't make a full statement a while ago because I was going to correct it later. But the USS Helena was sunk in Kula Gulf right after Guadalcanal, but I wasn't on it. They sent me off as a new construction. They were building destroyers so fast that they had to send them over to guard the convoys to get them to North Africa. So that's what I ended up on. And to me, the stories that I hear from my friends and my own experience is the leadership quality. The best thing about leadership is example. Because those men, our captain, when the Helena was sunk, 2 different groups ended up on Japanese-held islands, but they were never taken by the Japanese. The captain and I think the chief engineer or someone were the ones who did that, and the captain saved several lives during the Helena sinking. And I guess I can tell you this. We had trying to think. I have contracted, with age, I've contracted some kind of virus, and it's called a DIR. It's a delay in information retrieval. And it's in there, but it doesn't always come out. And I think example, because that's what we're taught to do, is lead by example. I think that's it.
Patriotism. In our lifetimes, we've seen
patriotism that we can relate to.
Yes.
How does that compare to how it was in World War II, which was probably the epitome of patriotism?
You got that right. He says it's the, World War II was the epitome of patriotism. Everyone was involved, but I smile at that because I was at sea all the time, almost continually during World War II, and never got back to the States just that one time to pick up and over. We came back on trips back and forth, but never any residency at all, not much experience. And I was only, what, 20? And as I came back, and I read about the war, and read about the magical conversion of our manufacturing to airplanes, tanks, jeeps, 180,000 B-17s or B-24s, I think. 180,000. Our country came together. Nothing was manufactured that wasn't for war. And I'm so proud to be a part of that country. It was great. When I found out, when I left Guadalcanal, the Navy were still on defensive. We didn't have many people, and we fought tooth and nail with the Japanese battleships at night in star shells and flash and searchlights. And I came back for Okinawa. And Okinawa, they down in the South Pacific, Ulithi is an area called Ulithi. And Ulithi was a staging area for Okinawa. And when we first came back through the Panama Canal, came over to Ulithi to get our part in the invasion, I saw so many ships, my mouth was open for days. I couldn't believe it. There were thousands of ships. And I was so proud of my country. Still am. Yeah.
Did the Helena participate in any open sea engagements between, like Pearl Harbor, Guadalcanal, and Okinawa?
Do what?
Did the Helena participate in any open water engagements between?
6.
What were those like?
Bad. We went in one night at Guadalcanal during the final stages of Guadalcanal. We went in with 13 ships and came out with 5. We lost an admiral, 2 admirals that night, and a captain. We lost the USS Atlanta, and the next morning we lost one you older people will probably remember because of the Sullivan brothers, the USS Juno. I was a signalman, and I was aboard the USS Helena as a signalman. And I was reading a message the next morning after we came out of the battle with the 5 ships, limping, all of them limping, except ours, which was in pretty good shape. And I was receiving a semaphore message, which you guys can semaphore, from the USS Juno. And she had been torpedoed that night and was limping. And the San Francisco, the admiral was killed and the captain was killed, the bridge was shot off, and a submarine was waiting for us outside. We had no destroyers. We had one destroyer that we had sent off to communicate, and it wasn't in very good shape. So we had no defense against submarines, and they were out there waiting for us. And they fired a torpedo at the San Francisco, I believe. It was on the other side, and it went behind the San Francisco. And while I was reading this message, and this guy standing on top of the turret, the Juno blew up. And 700 men disappeared in a puff of smoke. There were 700 men on the Juno. And of those 700 men, 10 survived. 100 survived, but by the time they could get to them and save them, because we couldn't stop, we had no defense. And we notified a B-17 flying over, and he received a message saying where they were in their latitude and longitude. But there were no survivors, including the 5 Sullivan brothers that they made a movie of. So the fellow who lost all 5 of theirs on that ship. And there were a couple of battles like that. That was the culmination when we finally stopped it, and the Marine General on Guadalcanal sent us a message and said, "To the men of Halsey's fleet, we lift our battered helmets." Because if they'd have been able to reinforce it, they would have been there a long time, or else they would have been run off. It was desperation time. So that's where we are. I didn't touch on too much of that. I'll close with it in just a minute. I have, I kind of encapsulate my history in a couple of things. I wanted, when you have shipmates, when you have soldiers and Marines and shipmates together, there's a bonding that you cannot deny. It's there and it's there forever. And I was on the Helena almost a year before and a year after Pearl Harbor, or more, and had shipmates. And when the Helena was sunk and I wasn't on it, I really felt that I should have been there. And I still feel that I should have been there. But God had other plans for me. Anyway, I was on a ship that was sunk, but I wasn't on it. That's part of my story. And I should have been. The other story, in Okinawa, we took a suicide plane. The ship broke its back, leaned over so far we couldn't pump the water out, and they told us to abandon it, and we abandoned it. And we went into the little harbor south of Okinawa, and they said, "Okay, maybe you'll get to go home now." But the next morning, a destroyer came in towing our ship. It didn't sink. It was just calm as glass out there. And we said, "Sink it, let's."
What ship was that?
USS Chase. It was a high-speed destroyer transport. We carried marine reconnaissance and underwater demolition teams for invading islands, picking out sites. But anyway, this is my story. I was not on the ship I wanted to be on, and it sank, and I was on the other ship I wanted to sing, and it didn't sing. That's my story. That's the bottom line. I don't want to run over. Shortly after World War II, I witnessed the test of 3 atomic bombs in the South Pacific Ocean. That was in Uitok. And these were the same type bombs they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then I was 10 miles away when they exploded the bombs. We would put them up on a platform, they would, on a little island, a little atoll in Uitok, and we would run out 10 miles, and then they would explode the bomb. Then they'd wait a certain amount of time, a few seconds, and then they would say, "Okay, you can turn around and look." Then we'd turn around with sunglasses and look, and there would be a big fireball like you see in the movies. I saw 3 of those, and those were very impressive. And then, as soon as we turned around in a little bit, we felt the heat. 10 miles? That's pretty good. Well, I got news for you. The hydrogen bomb that is the nuclear bomb of today is supposed to be 1,000 times stronger than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. In fact, the atomic bomb is the trigger for the hydrogen bomb. And I'm here to give you my opinion that if there's a World War III, there won't be any need